My life has never been the same. I've never experienced such a dark moment in my life. But not only just my life, but my son's life too. He didn't ask for any of this, but he bore the brunt of my diagnosis. Hello and welcome back. If you'd watched my previous video last week, thank you for returning. And if you're a newbie here, thank you for stumbling across my video and hopefully watching to the end. My name is Andrea Corbett and I'm a trauma-informed mindset coach and a heart healing practitioner. Wow, this week is going to be one that is very close to my heart. It pulls on a few heartstrings and I hope you enjoy it. Without further ado, let me get started. So as I mentioned, I'm a trauma-informed mindset coach and heart healing practitioner, but this is not only my title, it is also the services and modalities that I used to support me on my journey after I was diagnosed with a mental health illness. So I used those services and those modalities, really got myself into a great space, and as the educator that I am, I thought, you know what, this will be something good that I can do to support other people, primarily Black women and Black people who feel like I did, misunderstood, and who don't want to go through the hassle of explaining themselves, justifying what they're saying, or explaining their family history about why mental health is different in the Black community. So I am that person that people can come to and have a safe, non-judgmental conversation about not just their mental health, but if they've gone through some form of trauma, if they need heart healing. Those modalities are more than likely being delivered by someone that doesn't look like us. So yeah, that's who I am. I call this part of that part of my journey, my adversity to advantage journey. And the word adversity, so the definition for adversity is a difficult or unpleasant situation. So there's no lies that are told there at all. Why was it adversity for me? For many different reasons. One being that I, resigned from my role as a secondary school teacher, and I loved that role. I loved what I did. I wasn't just a school teacher, I was head of 2 departments, so literally in charge of the whole school's curriculum for IT and for business, and it all came crumbling down one day in February in 2015. So during that time, I was always asked a few questions and I kept repeating myself. And so I thought, what better way to put the answers out there to these questions in this video? And so throughout this video, I'm going to be answering the questions that I used to and I still do get asked when I'm doing my talks, or if anybody's just having a conversation with me and I happen to bring up the fact that I was diagnosed with a mental health illness. And yeah, so let's get through it. Before I start, actually, if there is a question that you would like me to answer, I was going to have a section in my playlist called Ask Andrea, and I thought that this would be a great time to introduce Ask Andrea. So you can either ask Andrea in the comments, or you could head over to my Instagram page and send me a DM over there and put the header in Ask Andrea so I know that you came from YouTube. So let's get started. So a question that I get asked was, what was life like before you was diagnosed? So before I was diagnosed, as I mentioned, I was diagnosed in 2015 and had a breakdown at school. I became a school teacher in 2005. I never chose to be a school teacher. I was literally forced into becoming a school teacher because a couple of people had said that I'll make a good teacher, and they found that out when I was working part time in a school. And in hindsight, this is the time of my life when I feel I had my first breakdown, not because of the school and the work. I was working part time because there was a breakdown in the relationship with my son and and I believe that that was caused because he was born in July 1997 and I went back to uni in October 1997, and it was just non-stop. Every year I was either working and or studying, and so our relationship along the way had broken down, and I I believe I probably had a breakdown myself because of our relationship breakdown and probably everything else that I was going through. I wasn't having such a great time with his dad. Probably having financial issues. There could have been so many different reasons. But I do remember that that was a time when I chose not to work or chose to work part time. Sorry, this is what happens when I digress. So yeah, as I was saying, that I had him halfway through my degree, and never really had that quality mother and son bonding time. And so when I did um, go part time, we was able to go on our first holiday to Portaventura. But even that was an issue before we even left the country, because this is me showing you how my brain works, or in this case, didn't work at the time. I booked our flight tickets, happy go lucky, surprised him driving to the airport. Where we going, son? I don't know. Then he sees the airport name. Are we going on holiday? Yes. Get to the airport, only to find out that I had booked a ticket with one surname, a surname that he had previously, and then on his passport he had a different surname because he had changed his surname, and I forgot. And so I had to buy a whole new ticket for him, and that whole new ticket actually cost more than both of our tickets put together. But what was I going to do? I was not going to turn back home. We had to continue this journey, and I will never forget that story. But it is what it is. So we went on holiday and we had a great time, and that was the end of that. But I've just mentioned how my brain works, and there's a few things that have happened now that have really shown me how my brain works and why the assessments that I'm going through right now are happening. So prior to me becoming a school teacher, I had good jobs, but I would just get so bored of those jobs and go AWOL. But I'll leave that for another video, because I feel like the assessments that I'm going through right now, these stories really do make a good case for what's happening in my life at the moment. So that was the question answered about what was life like before diagnosis, and that was the reason why I mentioned about going AWOL for my job, because that was part of what life was like before my diagnosis. Second question, and these are not in any particular order. Second question, Andrea, why didn't you call me and say you were not, you know? Firstly, I don't know. Say what you mean. And this is not directed at anybody in particular. This is me making the question so that people watching can resonate or can know how to pose a question when you're talking to somebody. If you're talking to someone and you're asking them about their mental health, say the two words mental health. You're not offending anybody. You're not being rude. you're just being straight and direct. Otherwise, you seem like you are being rude, and you seem like you don't really want the answer, because if you can't even say the two words mental health, how would I be able to come to talk to you about my mental ill health? And yeah, so why didn't you call me? What was I supposed to say? Like, there isn't a script that is available for people who a mental ill have mental ill health to say to somebody, this is what's happening to me. So a bit of background, so a bit more about what life was like before diagnosis. So in 2014, I was binge eating, I was drinking so much alcohol. I was a party girl. When I mean party, I literally had my son 1 week and was out 2 weeks later. Like, I was always out. And 2014, my life just changed. But at that time, my lack of education about mental health, I wasn't understanding these signs that were changing in my life. So, for example, I would be invited out, and at the time, again, I didn't know what it was called, but my social anxiety levels were so high that I couldn't go anywhere. I just wanted to, even though I wanted to, I don't even know whether it was I wanted to, I couldn't, I just stayed home all the time. Like, I obviously went to work and come back home again, but in terms of like going out, raving, partying, that was a no-no for me. I was becoming anxious about being around people, and yeah, so the only thing I could do was stay home. And then for me, the person that was always going out, to try and tell my friends that I'm feeling scared about being around people, it didn't, at the time, didn't, obviously wasn't right. And I didn't know the right words to convey this to them. So I just declined. And so instead, I would stay home. I would drink a lot. I would have a mug full of Vimto and vodka, and that I would drink to make myself happy. I would drink because I was sad. I would drink because I wanted to sleep. It was drink, 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 drink. I would drink when I needed to mark the pupils' work. Let's go and get a bottle of wine. I'll mark the work whilst drinking the wine. But the wine would finish and the work would still be sat on the table. In hindsight, obviously, that was the start of an issue. Did I recognize it? No. And this is why I do a lot of my talks, because these are the signs that people realize are happening to them, but because they're not aware of that mental ill health, they wouldn't necessarily see that as a problem. It'd be like, the life of a teacher. And no, that wasn't the life of a teacher. That was the life of a teacher that was struggling with her mental health. So binge eating, I would go out and buy family packs of everything and not share them with my family. They wouldn't even make it in the house. I would finish them and leave the remains or the packets underneath my car seat. And that was one of the biggest issues. But I digress. And, well, did I digress? Because the question was, Andrea, why didn't you call me? Basically, I didn't know what to say. I didn't know that I was actually going through anything. And then I got that same question when I was diagnosed, because I still didn't know what to say. Yes, I was diagnosed, but I still wasn't any more clued up about mental health than I was prior to being diagnosed. And so then it came with the added disadvantage of, I didn't want to embarrass myself. I didn't want to be a disgrace to my family and my friends. And so, why am I going to say anything? Why am I going to call you and say, oh, guess what? The doctors have just diagnosed me with a mental health illness. I actually didn't tell anybody for months. I didn't tell my best friend. I didn't tell my mum. I didn't tell anybody. I was literally home and would just say, oh, the doctor signed me off sick. And that seemed to work okay with people. So I didn't know. If you say to people, it's not because they didn't want to call you, it's not because they didn't trust you, it's not because they didn't love you or they didn't feel loved. It's just that the lack of the lack of language on how to describe the feeling to someone that you don't feel will understand is difficult. It's very, very hard. And so that's why I didn't call anybody or anything like that prior or even post diagnosis, until post was about 3 months. Next question, Andrea, what caused you to get to the point of a diagnosis? Who the knows? There are so many different factors that come into play when it comes to mental health. A person, me personally, couldn't pinpoint exactly what it was that caused me to be diagnosed. All I know is that in, like I mentioned, 2014, I was struggling. I didn't know how to talk about it. And so for me, it was like problem on top of problem on top of problem on top of problem. How I describe it now when I'm doing my talks is that, well, let's use this as an example, making sure the lid's on. Imagine this is a fizzy bottle, and I've got a teenage son. I've got overload of work. My car breaks down. My finances are just getting rubbish. Just so many issues that are on top, on top, on top. And then that day in February, my lid just flipped and it went everywhere, literally everywhere. And so that's my analogy of how I use when people say what caused me to get to the point of diagnosis. It was a combination of many different things. A relationship that I was in that I know I shouldn't have been in. Um, raising a teenage son, finances, work, you name it. Not talking was one of my big things. And again, that's another story about my inner child and the issues that we have. And yeah, another video. I won't digress anymore. So that's how I say what caused me to. I don't. There isn't a cause, but how I explain how I got to the point of diagnosis. Next question: How would I know to go to the doctors? Everyone's different. Like, I would say, like in 2014, when I mentioned about the binge eating, the drinking, consuming a lot of alcohol, lack of motivation, social anxiety. At that point, if I had known then what I know now, I would have gone to the doctors without being told. I would have booked an appointment possibly early in 2014. But again, that is all hindsight now, but that is what I would have done. Like I said, just repeating myself, if I had known then what I know now. So that was the question of Andrea, what caused, no, that wasn't that question. That was how would I know how to go, if and when I should go to the doctors. The next question is, why did I resign? So as I mentioned, I resigned. Oh, I didn't mention this part, but I mentioned that I resigned, but I resigned in October 2015 because, to my knowledge and what was going on in my head, that my inner critics, my saboteurs, Negative Nelly was just chatting so much crap in my head, saying you can't go back to work as a school teacher, you can't go back to work as a head of 2 departments, the children are going to make fun of you, you could never work with young people again, who's going to want you in charge of young people when you've been diagnosed with a mental health illness, your colleagues are going to be talking about you behind your back, they're not going to want to talk to you because you've been diagnosed with a mental health illness, your line manager's not. The list of negativity was going on and on and on and on in my head. And the only thing that I could do and think of to shut this negative Nelly, these saboteurs up, were to just resign. I resigned and I didn't even have any contact with the school because things were so bad. I was so anxious and scared. Imagine one day I had to go back into school. It's called a kit day, so keep it in touch day. It took me over 2 hours to get out of my car. I had to call my friend to help her. She had to help me to calm down because I literally was having a panic attack just at the mere thought of going back into the school. Then when I did get into the school and I did sit down at a desk and was going to do some work, not with any of the pupils, but just do some admin work, I remember looking at my screen thinking that, is this actually English? Because it looks like a different language to me. I couldn't make head nor tail of what was written. I felt like I had lost all my mojo. I felt like I've lost all my teaching superpowers. And yes, you are a superhero being a teacher. I've lost all of that. And so, with that in mind, as well as all the negative inner comments that I was getting, I resigned. I didn't even think about until people were asking me, so what are you going to do next? I didn't. It wasn't even a thought until then, and that by then it was too late because I had already pressed the send the email to my head teacher button. So it is what it is, and I'm actually glad that I resigned because so many things have happened, positive things have happened since resigning. Um, so that just leads me on nicely into what is life like now. So just following on the back of that, one thing that did happen exactly a year after pressing that email to go to my head teacher, I became the founder and director of Focus on Creating Your Ultimate Self, Focus for short, CIC, in October 2016. And that organization is set up to work primarily with young women and girls, primarily black young women and girls who are aged between 10 and 21. Imagine, I resigned because I didn't think I could ever work with young people again. And there's me setting up my own organization to do just that. So to say I'm proud of myself is an understatement. So that is part of what life is like for me now. That community interest company is still going. Um, I've learned how to say the word no a lot more without feeling guilty about it. I still have my dark moments. They're not as long as what they used to be. Like I would go for weeks, obviously months, having dark moments. But now I know my triggers. I know how to handle them. I know how to comfort myself when I need that comfort. Um, yeah, and so my inner child is so happy now because she is being cared for and looked after, and she doesn't have to feel like she, is banging her head against a brick wall trying to tell me that something is wrong and I'm not listening. I am listening and I'm taking that time out, and that involves saying the word no a lot more, setting boundaries for work, for home, for life, just knowing what I'm capable of and what load I can carry at any given time. 8 years on, and I'm being assessed for other disorders, but that will be for another video. I will update you onto what those disorders are and why only now I'm going for assessments. I've had I've learned so much about myself during this journey, and I'm so grateful for what has happened to me. Like I said, it is my adversity that has turned into an advantage because it's given me that opportunity to literally have a clean slate, so to speak, and reinvent myself. And it's been a journey. It is a journey. I'm still on that journey, but the healing journey that I probably would I have done it? Who knows? I can't answer that question. But going on the healing journey that I have been on and that I am on, and that I support other people to go on now via my heart healing practitioner work, has been such a godsend to me, because I journal, I speak about my feelings, I'm more open and honest, I'm a lot more calmer. You know, people that have known me for years have stated to me, boy, you're like a different person. The only thing that is the same with you is that you're still childish. But I'll take that because, you know, as I said, I am 46 years young and got to maintain this youthfulness to some extent. But I'm able to switch from being so childish to being very adult like and professional. So that's fine, you know, not every day adult and not every day serious. What else? I'm able to have non-judgmental conversations with myself and with others. I, you know, I'm more, I empathize more with people in terms of, you know, I wonder what they're going through. If someone said something to me that may not be so nice, and then maybe they're going through something. And you know, as that meme says, or as people say in life, you just never know what someone's going through. So don't judge. And especially someone like myself, I have what is called high functioning depression. So I could be going about my not so merry way and no one would never know, because I have what I call the mask. And I don't say it as a good thing, but it is there and it is what it is. I've acknowledged it and I know it's there, and I know how to, like I said, how to manage it. But having high functional depression, people on the outside may look at you as if, she's getting on with things, she's fine. Like, I saw you post the other day, or I saw you do this and I saw you do that. But they don't see what's happening in between those times. And, you know, a lot of the times I'll be crumbling and you will never know. And so it's having, you know, not being judged, having those not non-judgmental conversations makes my life a lot easier, because I know who I can talk to, who I can say, oh, this is happening, and or I can just cry on the phone to, or something. I can, you know, be vulnerable, and it makes such a big difference. I I am now a mental health England first aid instructor. As a result, you know, went on a research journey of like, what is mental health? Why did I get it? And on that journey, it led me to becoming an instructor to teach others about mental health. And overall, my adversity has led me to different advantages. As I mentioned last week, I am a British champion bodybuilder. Now, that was something that I would never have got into had it not been for my mental health journey. So that is, in a nutshell, what life is like for me now in terms of my mental health. And as I said, I'll keep you posted on the other assessments that I'm going for. But in order to keep these videos within a certain time scale, I won't go into them now. So with that being said, just saying thank you. If you got this far in the video, much appreciated. I hope that it's helped in some shape or form. I hope that, you know, maybe my questions and answers have given you some insight. If not, or if it has and you still want more, like I said, please comment in the comments, ask Andrea, and then ask me a question, or head over to my Instagram, which is Andrea Corbett, and DM me over there. If you just tell me, ask Andrea, and I know that you've come from YouTube. And if there's any questions, as long as it's not too personal, I will answer. Because I do a lot of talks around my mental health and my lived experience, and so I'm fairly okay with answering different questions. And before I, you know, go, if you are experiencing any of the symptoms I mentioned within this video, I would advise you to, without any second, just seek medical advice. I wouldn't even say ask a friend. Go to seek medical advice. Maybe, you know, wherever you are in the country. I know we've got 111, but I would still say to make an appointment at a GP. just to be on the safe side, because mental health does not discriminate, regardless of color, gender. It really doesn't matter. We can all experience a mental ill health. So, you know, just to check it out. And I will be putting some links in my feed with people, with organizations that you can contact and websites that you can check out. And there is a questionnaire that you could go through that asks some questions, and you can base your results on the answer that you may be looking for. But I'll still boil back down to getting GP support. Once again, thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, like I said, put them in the comments or head over to my Instagram, Andrea Corbett _ yeah, and as always, I would appreciate if you could like this video, and if you want to follow for some more, you could always subscribe. But thank you, and I will speak to you again next week. I hope you have a great week, and thanks for listening.